There's always this speculation that the MMO as a whole is slowly dying, but could we actually be on the horizon of a new golden age? Now, no doubt if you search for anything related to MMOs as a whole, you're always going to run into the search, is it dead or dying? There is this constant anxiety in the community that a game that they've spent their free time on is no longer going to exist because of a lack of interest in the community. But let's be completely honest here, it isn't very often that an MMO properly dies and is taken offline. As an audience, we're naturally a lot more critical on the population of an MMO. After all, most of them require some sort of social activity that requires the assistance of other people, whether that be trading or instanced content. Now granted, there are some out there that you absolutely could play the majority as a solo player, but then an MMO only exists as an MMO as long as you have the community participating in it. People talk a lot about the decline of the genre, but if you compare this to the absolute decimation of CRPGs in the late 90s to early 2000s, when companies wouldn't even consider funding titles that are now considered classics because it just came around too late, then we certainly aren't at that point. At this moment in time, there are 26 confirmed MMOs in development, and some of these are by some massive companies such as Riot, Amazon, ZeniMax, and Sony, who are all making a game in the genre. And not all of them are unknown universes either, with Amazon making a new Lord of the Rings, and Sony, for some reason, making a Horizon MMO. Now, this isn't to say that these are going to be guaranteed hits, because, of course, we can't predict that. And in fact, I'd imagine that more than half of them are going to see a dramatic drop-off in popularity a few months, if not weeks after launch. Let's be real though, the precursor to a lot of this without a doubt was the pandemic. It gave a lot of people the chance to try out something that they could have previously been curious about, even if it wasn't just MMOs but gaming as a whole. Granted, a lot of people did drop off after that, but of course it's going to, that's only natural. However, a lot of people have stuck around since that time and are still playing today. Now personally, I think one of the biggest factors to all of this is accessibility. If you were there, you'd remember how laggy early MMOs could be, with a lot of people still coming away from dial-up and slower broadband speeds in general. I remember a time when I went to a friend's house back when I was in school in the mid-2000s, and I wanted to show him RuneScape. He was on dial-up at the time, and I shit you not, the game took 15 minutes to load. And as soon as I got in, he said, "Why would I want to play this old-ass game? The graphics are shit, and your character looks homeless." So we pretty much immediately went back to playing the local multiplayer maps on Nightfire. The world has opened up a lot more now, and in many ways we're a lot more connected and have brand new ways of playing. The advent of things like the Steam Deck, MMOs on consoles, and even mobile have undoubtedly sparked a huge rise in the player base. And look, I know a lot of people cry about mobile games and games that have mobile versions, but listen here, I will fight anyone who tries to tell me that sitting on the sofa in the winter with blankets and playing old school RuneScape on your phone isn't cozy. But just because we're seeing good retention of players in most of the bigger games, it doesn't mean we're going to see numbers like we did in the mid-2000s. Of course we won't. The market is just more saturated than it's ever been, and the line between what gets the tag of MMO is becoming more and more blurred. And some people even arguing that Monster Hunter, Tarkov, and even Star Citizen are a part of the genre. I don't personally agree with those opinions, however, it just goes to show that having the tag of an MMO isn't necessarily a bad thing to have your game linked to. You can also see that the market is absolutely starved for a new big MMO experience. If you look at the hype around the day before in Quinfall, one a completely outed scam and the other that is being debated as to whether or not it is, which make your own mind up on that. There's plenty of videos out there that shows exactly what Quinfall is, and just think smart, don't let the hype cloud your judgment before making a purchase. Let's just be real as well on the argument of Quinfall. There's not that many games out there that are doing paid betas with cash shops, so they don't give you much hope. But regardless of the controversies surrounding the games, people are still excited and living on that bit of hopium that maybe we have a new strong contender in the market. The fact that scam games are even being made really proves the point that the market is growing. Who's going to waste their time looking to scam a small audience when you can go big? The time it could take for them to flip assets to make just another Fall Guys ripoff, for example, isn't going to allow them to cast a wide enough net. It's not the greatest feeling in the world to say that the evidence of the popularity of something you love is due to how many scammers there are, but it's true. And that goes the same for golden gear sellers in games. If the money wasn't there, then they wouldn't be either. If I really feel like we're heading into a golden age, then how can I explain all of the content that says otherwise? Personally, I think it's a combination of things. If you just started an MMO, most of them, especially if they don't have content that automatically scales you down like Final Fantasy, will have a lot of the older zones and instant content appeared to be barren, and for the most part, are pretty much obsolete, especially if you look at games such as Retail WoW. And much like my time with Rift recently, I barely saw anyone in the time that I was playing in the open world, but there was always lots of people in the instance adventure content. Now, just because you can't see the people, that doesn't mean that there aren't people there. However, I think this is a bit of a failure of game design on the behalf of the developers. I believe that transparency would also help alleviate a lot of the issues that people are facing with understanding if an MMO is dying or not. The data from that could also be collected to see how the market is doing as a whole. Now, obviously, this isn't going to be in the best interests of the company, as this is why Blizzard have stopped posting all of theirs, same with Square Enix. And since those big ones stopped posting their numbers, you don't have many that actually do show you the exact real-time number anymore. But I can also understand the damaging consequences to the brand that it could have to show those numbers. And maybe I'm just on nuclear grade hopium, but seeing all these massive budget devs being able to put funds into these sorts of projects, we might actually be sat here in a few years' time with a new MMO that sits in the same standing as WoW, Final Fantasy, New World, BDO, or ESO. What that'll be, no one can really say, but I'm looking forward to all of the new worlds that are going to be there to explore.